live 30 minutes away from Shannondoa National Park in the Shannondoa Valley of Virginia. Growing up, I spent countless weekends, hours, and miles on the trail there, developing a deep connection with the park. This connection that I have with Shannondoa inspired my artwork, encouraged me to pursue a career in conservation, and initiated my quest to visit all of the national parks across the country. I feel so connected to Shannondoa that rather than saying I live near Shannondoa National Park, I more often claim that I live at Shannondoa National Park because, after all, it feels true for me. This connection has brought me from a very young age. This is me 15 years ago at the summit of Stony Man Hike. Here I am scribbling in my junior ranger notebook before I got sworn in as a junior ranger of the park. Now, many years later, not much has changed. Here I am just a couple months ago on Skyline Drive, where I visit every time I go home for a break, whether it's a long weekend or a winter break. Now, on one of my visits 6 years ago, I visited the Shannondoa National Park Visitor Center. On the wall of this visitor center, several words caught my eye, which you'll see here on the right. Thus, the submerged mountain individual is irresponsible, untaught, untrained, and unfitted to meet the competition of modern life. Now, this slanderous accusation really stuck with me, and after a couple of times to check with the visitor center officiants, I was able to understand that these people that lived at Shannondoa were forcibly removed when the park was created through the process of eminent domain. Now, I had visited Shannondoa at this point more times than I could count, but I had never heard of this, and I was taken aback, but I knew I wanted to learn more. I could neither close my eyes to these words that I had seen, nor turn back on my desire to learn more. When I got dressed to spend this evening with you, I reached for my trusty hiking boots that I'm wearing here today. These boots have traveled with me across the country to all sorts of national parks, hiked on miles and miles of trails, and they are nothing short of worn in. The boots have lost all of their original traction. They are not the same color that they started, and they are no longer anything close to waterproof. But still, these are the shoes that I was wearing that day at the visitor center, and these are the boots that I was walking in when I began to understand that the footsteps that I was creating on that land were far from the first to connect with the beauty of their surroundings. To begin to investigate this principle of the relations between Indigenous peoples and national parks, I set out on a little bit of a daunting quest, a road trip to all of these places on this map above that all have histories of Indigenous inhabitation. I wanted to see firsthand the lands that these people lived on and the information that is provided about them in the visitor centers like I saw at Shannondoa. To start my journey, I laced up my boots and continued on to Mount Rushmore National Monument in South Dakota. I had read in the news about Mount Rushmore's relations with Indigenous people and was aware of the fact that the Black Hills region, where Mount Rushmore is situated, has spiritual significance to many Plains Indians tribes, specifically the Lakota Sioux. Now, this seemed like a great place to start if I wanted to find out more about the land relations between national parks and Indigenous peoples. After about an hour of scouring the visitor center here, I had read countless panels, looked at pictures, and even watched some of the videos, and I had seen many tales of the daunting heroism undertaken by the sculptors of Mount Rushmore, but I did not see a single piece of information about the native inhabitants that were impacted by the creation of the monument. I didn't give up yet. I approached the park ranger, and I asked if there were additional pamphlets or more information. I was met with a park map for Devil's Tower National Monument 3 hours away in Wyoming, but no other information about this park. Now, disheartened, I laced my boots a little tighter, but I kept going. I went an hour south to Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota. Despite its geographic proximity, Wind Cave had infinitely more information about the park's relationship to Native peoples. Wind Cave is the natural cave entrance, pictured behind me, is considered to be the emergence location for the Lakota people as part of their creation story. And these flags that you see are part of the regular respects and times where the people will come and visit the natural cave entrance. In the visitor center, they had three-dimensional building reconstructions, signage in the Lakota language, and the entire exhibit layout was based on the symbolic medicine wheel. Now, with all of this information, Wind Cave still receives 4 times fewer visitors than Mount Rushmore every year. In my final leg of the national park journey, I used my boots to go a little bit farther this time, all the way to California at Joshua Tree National Park. Joshua Tree is situated on the land of 15 federally recognized tribes, and the visitor center there reflects this tribal diversity. Joshua Tree has signs in the visitor center that are made by the tribes that they are meant to represent, including their languages, cultures, customs, and traditions. The designs, the building, it is all made by and for the indigenous people that occupied this land. The building that represents the tribal diversity is a centerpiece in the park and is visited by many visitors, whether they're coming to rock climb, see these namesake Joshua trees, or even just go for a hike. Before retiring my boots, I let them take me on one final journey, back to my new home at William&Mary. William&Mary is the second oldest college in the nation, and as such has its own relationship with Native peoples. As some of you may know, the Brafferton Indian School is situated across the lawn from the President's House on what we know as Old Campus. And it is known for being one of the earliest education efforts by colonists to educate the Native children in English. And it was a voluntary effort that is often mistaken for the more common residential boarding schools implemented in the 19th and 20th centuries. These residential boarding schools aimed to, quote, kill the Indian and save the man, end quote, but the Brafferton was a more voluntary effort that mostly focused on language. Now, I have been a student at William&Mary for now 4 years, but I did not learn about the history of the Brafferton until last semester in Dr. Buck Woodard's anthropology course entitled Introduction to Native Studies. Similarly, despite considering myself a park enthusiast, it wasn't until high school that I truly understood the connection between national parks and indigenous peoples and how the two went together. Now, the reason for this is not because of a lack of available information, but these gaps in my knowledge were really created by a lack of awareness. As you watch me up here on this stage, with the pleasure to be with you all tonight, you may wonder if I have the authority to even be speaking on this topic. I'm white. I do not have indigenous ancestors. My ancestors did not live on this land. But the reality is that now I do, and it is my responsibility to understand the history of the land that I live on, understand and be able to respect it fully. It is not my intention that any of you treat me as the authority on indigenous land relations with the United States. In fact, I truly hope the opposite. There are countless indigenous scholars, papers, books that you would be able to learn much more from, and I hope that you all will. But my being here tonight should serve as proof that no matter who you are, and no matter what your interests are, you are capable, you have the capacity to seek out this deeper level of information that you will not be taught. So to all of you here with me tonight, I issue a challenge. When you leave here, I want you to pick one thing, something that you are passionate about. I know that not all of you came here tonight maybe having ever been to a national park. Maybe you've never thought about national parks. But there is something for you that makes you feel passionate, and I want you to take that thing and use the power available to you and get to know it better. You all have a portable encyclopedia in your back pocket, and I hope that you will use it to seek out information. With the time that I have this evening, it would be impossible for me to give you a full briefing on the history of the indigenous peoples and how they've interacted with the United States, because I can't even give you the full story of all the parks that I visited personally. But if we all take the time to pick our one thing and truly understand it more deeply, our collective level of understanding will increase. For me, I took this journey in my hiking boots. They took me on a powerful journey into the past. So next time each of you are outside, I hope that you will look at the ground beneath your feet. I don't mean glance, I mean truly, really look. You never know whose footsteps you're walking in.